Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my finest friends. Welcome to episode 11 of season 4 of the Tom Petty Project podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Brown, but you probably already know that. This is the podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalogue, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. Speaking of fans, today's episode is a fantastic conversation that I had with Janet Lovell back in early July. Janet will be well known to members of the Tom Petty Nation. She posts in there fairly regularly and always comes up with great content and shares some of the stuff that she owns, which is always interesting. And it was great to spend a couple of hours in her company and geek out over Tom and his music. And again, she has a pretty incredible collection of Tom Petty memorabilia and merchandise, and she was incredibly gracious in sharing so much of it with me. However, as this is primarily in audio format, I've cut almost all of the show and tell out. And what I'm going to do is edit that together as a sort of a bonus YouTube version of it showing me these treasures. And I'll publish that sometime this week as a fun little extra. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And if I ever get the chance to go to Denver, I'm definitely going to be heading over to Janet's house and knocking on her door so that I can sit down with her and have her show me the rest of her collection. Enjoy. Okay, so is that where you were brought up? Then we'll dig straight into your background. Where were you born?
I grew up in New Jersey. I'm an East Coast girl. Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up with Springsteen and all those kinds of guys, Jackson Browne, probably in that. Okay, and so what was music like in the home? Like, were your parents musical or?
Yeah, and we had the great big console in the living room that had the record player sitting on top, and the TV inside, and they listened to a lot of older music like Engelbert Humperdinck, and
Right.
My mom loved Tom Jones, and a lot of the the older generation stuff.
Who doesn't love Tom Jones?
That's good. I would get my records and play them on the stereo, but I had to listen with the headphones on because my parents weren't particularly fond of what I was listening to. So
and what was that?
Well, just a lot of stuff, coming in the 70s. I loved Led Zeppelin and some of the older bands. I have a lot of Led Zeppelin, a lot of Beatles, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same kind of stuff I grew up with. I mean, and the Who I grew up with, and the Kinks, and
Yes.
the T-Rex, and all those kinds of bands, right? And again, just getting those vinyl records. I mean, kids don't understand that today. And getting the record, putting it on the turntable, you kind of locked in then, right? Because you're not going to start messing around with the needle skipping songs. So you listen to a whole album.
Yes.
So
and the songs in the order they're supposed to be.
Yes. I don't know if you ever found, like, I remember when Queen released Greatest Hits, and we started listening to Greatest Hits, everything's out of sequence. So when Another One Bites the Dust finishes, well, the next song off the game is supposed to be Sail Away Sweet Sister, but now it's now it's something else, and it just messes with your brain a little bit, right? So,
and that was my younger brother's favorite band. Yeah.
Queen.
Yep.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah.
So do you remember a point at which you sort of became aware of Tom Petty, or a point where you sort of just fell in love with his music?
Yes, and my story is kind of what the band got categorized in the beginning, because I first heard them in 77 in the spring, and I was at a friend's house, and her older sister was very punk, and her friend was there who was in my grade, so we were all friends, and she said, come downstairs. We went down the basement to her room to listen to this record, and it was the debut album. And I was just like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And, when you're growing up in the 70s and you hear the songs and everybody's like Leonard Skinner, Zeppelin, Aerosmith, all those bands, I didn't want to just jump on somebody else's bandwagon. So when I heard this band, who wasn't really getting much airplay yet at all, I was like, this is my band. And of course I went out and bought the album right away and never looked back. It's been ever since. It's always been my favorite band. Never have I wavered. I have so much stuff, Kevin, I could show you and talk to you about, and stuff just that I collected over time that like my introduction. I was working for the Denver Post at one time.
Okay.
Like this was in '89. That's when I moved out here. And I got a job there, and we had to fill out this form, tell us about you thing. And on there, favorite musician, Tom Petty. Like it's never stopped. And it's I've got some kind of funny stories of just being at some of those shows, the earlier ones, and because I remember, of course, who I was with and what was going on there. And
yeah, it really frames it. Music does, it's a through line. If you love music, it's a through line through your whole life, right? You connect certain people to it, you connect certain places to it, certain songs are very meaningful. And so, but so it was instant for you though. Like as soon as you heard that band and Tom's voice, that was just, you were in.
Yes.
That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, because I obviously came to it a lot later, but yeah. So what would have been what was the first show you saw then? When did you see them live first? So
the first one was, if you remember Stephen Markowitz's post, he recorded Tom Petty at they were at a show called Tomorrow Coast to Coast, and it was July 16th, 1981. And I went to the taping of that show because I knew they were going to be there, and I had to call for tickets, and then they mailed them to me in the mail. I got 2. I dragged my little brother with me. He was fine with it because we lived in New Jersey. So we either had to take the train or the bus into the city. And we went to the show, and that was just like amazing. And the sound in there it was a small studio.
Yeah.
And I have to say, the smallest audience I've ever seen them in. And it's just funny that it was the first time, but I'll show you.
Sure, yeah.
This is my ticket from the show.
So cool.
And of course, my brother didn't keep his.
That's in such good condition, though.
Yeah, I probably kept it in a book or something until I had this little box, this little woven metal box that, something from the 70s. Probably my parents gave it to me, and I lined it with felt, and I used to put all my concert tickets in there.
So have you got all of them?
I don't have all of them. I have a lot of them.
Because I was part of that. I was talking to, I did another podcast with someone else's podcast, and they were asking about the name of my podcast, the Tom Petty Project, and why it's project rather than podcast. And I said, one of the things that eventually I want to do is build out my website so that it's a fan hub where things like this, where we could have, wouldn't it be cool to get a photo of every single gig they ever played? And get the set list dead right, because Setlist FM is pretty good, but I think, the fans who are there and remember, they know.
I've seen some mistakes in there. So it's mostly reliable, but I think sometimes people are relying on memory that isn't so good anymore.
Well, as we get older, it all starts to fade, right?
Yeah.
I heard a wonderful quote from a comedian I listened to. He said, it's just like, they're like fingerprints on an abandoned handrail. Those memories, they just fade away. I was like, I'm using that one. So how many times then? Because I know you saw the band a lot. Do you know how many times you've seen them?
Yeah, I do. And I'm not one of the people that got to see them, 60 times or 50 times. Actually, I can run off and tell you, because I actually I think I have all my tickets. But so 81 was the first one, but that was on a television show. Yeah. So then I saw them in 85.
And that was 3 songs, or how many songs was that TV show?
That was 2 and an interview. Yeah.
Right.
And then I saw them in 85 for the Southern Accents tour. And that was pretty awesome. And next one was 91 for Into the Great Wide Open tour. That was out here in Colorado.
Okay.
The other one was Jersey. And then life happens.
Yeah.
I had a child, moved around a bit. So, and money was not flowing, and concerts were just so much of a luxury that I was always listening, but couldn't go. And very sad, because I knew that the shows were going on that were near me.
Yeah.
And so there was quite a stretch between that and the next one. And so the next one for me was actually Mudcrutch. And that was in 2016. So see, that's a long time, 2 children later, and lots of moving around.
Yeah.
And then Mudcrutch, then the 40th anniversary tours. I saw both shows at Red Rocks, and yeah, it was great. It was great, especially it rained both times, but like the rainstorm the second day was the worst because there was lightning. I mean, it was pretty scary to be there at that time because you're on a hill and you're outside, and the clouds are pretty low because you're so high. And but that caused them to give us some extra songs, and that was pretty fun.
That's so cool.
And then I went to the very last show at the Hollywood Bowl.
You were at that one?
Yes.
Oh wow, that must be something else. I mean, I was going to say though too, because I was going to ask actually if you'd seen them at Red Rocks, because that is, I think that probably it's at least in my top 3 venues that I want to see. I'll see anybody there. I don't care because it just looks so cool, that place.
You have to go to a show there. It's amazing. It's so fun. I've seen Grateful Dead there. I've seen a lot of bands there, but I saw the Grateful Dead there like in '87, and I used to visit before I moved out here.
Yeah.
So but yeah, something told me, and Kevin and I have never ever flown anywhere to go see a show.
Right.
But something told me, and it's just weird the way that happened. Like something said, you have to go. And like the day that the show, it was supposed to be the 21st, and then they added another show, and then they added another show.
Yeah.
So when they were doing the first one, I was at a Renaissance festival, like out in the middle of the woods, and I couldn't get a good signal. So I could only get seats in what they were calling the terrace boxes, which were kind of back. And, you know, once you get to sit close, you know, you kind of don't want to go back there anymore. And so then they had tickets for the next, you know, when they added the second show. And I think it was a complete fail for me. I just couldn't get anything even remotely close. Like even those terrace boxes were out of the question at this point.
Right.
And then they announced the third show, and I don't remember what happened. I just remember that I didn't get tickets, and I was really bummed out. And then 6 days before the show, Ticketmaster released second row tickets in the pool, like really right in front of the stage. And I was like, well,
wow.
and I got one, and so now I have a ticket. I don't have a flight. I got to be there in 6 days. Don't have a place to stay. Don't know how to get around there. You know, don't really know anything about LA. I've been south of there, but never there. So it all worked out. I went anyway, but thank God I did.
No kidding.
I couldn't have been closer. I mean, I could have walked up to the stage, but I was like, you know, I just wanted to be respectful and stay at my spot. So I did.
Yeah. Second row though. I mean, that's crazy. That's so cool. And I like that because I think, you know, I've talked with other people like this. I assume probably that was Tom and the band doing that, saying, let's release some of these tickets late because fans don't always get tickets. And Tom was always very conscientious about making sure that the fans, not scalpers, not as much as they could do, that the tickets ended up in the hands of real fans, right?
Yeah. And I made sure some of my other friends got tickets in that row also, because once I got mine, I was like, okay, now I can help somebody else out. It's just like when you get on the plane, you put your mask on first, then you give somebody else.
Yeah. So obviously that last show then becomes very sentimental and very sort of special and meaningful to you, but having been a chance to be there. Any other shows of the other shows that you saw, were there any real standouts or sort of real standout songs that you just blew you away?
So the Into the Great Wide Open tour was just amazing because that's when they had this huge dramatic stage setup. They had the great big tree, and you know, there was a story to go with it. And that's the one I always say is the most magical of all of them. I love every single show that I've been to, but like that for me was just, it was so much fun. And to sing, and it was just a fantastic show. And
Yeah.
I was there with my manager from the Denver Post.
Okay.
And I remember being there at the show, and everybody's passing things by, and I'm just like, no, thank you.
But that set, yeah, I mean, I remember because that set, obviously there's video footage of that tour, and when they do "Don't Come Around Here No More," and the chest opens and it's got the light, and he's sprinting around, and I think that's when, because I saw Pink Floyd live and I've seen Alice Cooper live. When you put a little bit of sort of theater into it, it definitely changes the whole atmosphere, right? And you get into it in a different way.
Yes, and they put on, they had guys running on the stage because he went up, at one point and comes out with this big peace sign ring.
Yeah.
And he's chasing after this guy in a Ronald Reagan mask and these politicians. It was just so funny.
Yeah.
But it was great.
Yeah. And so, like, obviously through Tom Petty Nation, that sort of brings fans together as a community. You've had a chance, I think, right, to sort of meet up with other fans at gigs and sort of meet people who you not necessarily would have done. And that's been my favorite part of doing this is it's like there's a huge community out there of Tom Petty fans who are just nuts about him and nuts about him as well as his music. Because when I started this, I kind of thought, well, I'm sure there's a Facebook group or something. There'll be a few people who I can sort of maybe connect with and might listen to this podcast. Found the TPN, I'm like, oh, okay, this is like serious, full on. I need to listen. I need to pay attention and listen to these people because these people know what's going on. So when were you in sort of the fan club before the Tom Petty Nation, or was the Tom Petty Nation? Okay, so I wanted to talk about that. Yeah,
I was in the fan club first, the Highway Companions Club first, and that's how we're supposed to get tickets ahead of time. Here, I have something else I want to show you.
Yeah, sure.
Little tidbits of things, because this is something that I never shared. So my Post-it pad, I still have paper.
Yeah.
This was my Highway Companions Club code to go in and be able to purchase tickets.
Okay.
Ever since I wrote this down, I've never used this pad again, and I probably never will. And I'm like, why do I still have this? I can't use it, but it's important to me.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a link back to a very happy time, right? I think we've all got those things. I don't think that's crazy at all. And I know that, seeing when people do share these things through the nation, it's always magical, I think, because you get in, okay, it's just a ticket or it's just a poster or but it's so much more than that. That person's sharing this because it means something to them, right? And that love that comes out of that sort of community, I just find fantastic. And the admins, Keith and his team do such a fantastic job of keeping everything's respectful, everything's legit, and I just, it's such a nice family to be part of. I spend way too much time in that group every day, so waste a lot of time in there.
Yeah, I love that page, and I have to say it was a lot smaller. Like once Tom passed, it kind of exploded. I mean, there was only about, I think, 10 or 12,000 people in that group before he passed,
right?
And then it kind of morphed into something else, and it's still good. Like for me, it's kind of hard because I really love sharing stuff that, I don't know, a lot of times it's things I think maybe people haven't seen, or I like sharing facts and things about his career, and like that kind of stuff really is so important to me just because it's in my blood, I think. And there's a lot of minutia in there now that kind of makes me crazy because, I think we were talking before this about stuff disappearing down in when it gets posted. A lot of things just kind of fade away before they have a chance to be seen. But there's so many things that get repeated and silly stuff,
Yeah.
And I mean, if it were my page, I would have it a little different, and it's definitely changed over time.
Right.
Because the family's now involved with the page, and and
it's difficult to manage that many people. And when, like you said, I mean, there's 46, 47 now, or something around there.
Like that. Something around there. It's pretty high, maybe 49 by now.
Yeah, and so just dealing with the amount of content that's being posted, right? And I was talking to someone about this because I run a page for something different. It would be lovely if Facebook could, like, if you had two people shared the same video, within sort of an hour of each other, that clutters things up a little bit. So it would be nice if Facebook just said, well, this has already been shared. Would you just want to comment on the other post? I think even something like that would be so handy, it'd be so helpful, and it would take a lot of work off those admins because, again, they've all got jobs. This is just, they're doing this off the side of their desk.
I know. I mean, my big thought on that was when new people join that group, they should be muted for 6 months so they can read what's in there and then get an idea of what ought to be going on. Because, I know people want to share things in life events and not everybody has the same experience, but I kind of wish they would see what I like the page as. And, of course I'm not an admin on that page. So
yeah, no, I understand totally understand what you're saying though. And I think that's where some of these other Facebook groups do sprout up, right? Because they just want to take it in a slightly different direction and make it a little bit quieter and a little bit smaller. And, the Tom Petty Fans Forever group that Gwen runs, I love. That's one of my favorite ones too. And again, all these things for my podcast, like you said, I listen very, very carefully because there's lots of really useful information that isn't in, it's not in Paul Zollo's book or it's not in the interviews. And if you can go back and you can fact check it and make sure that it's accurate, which it almost always ends up being, it's like, okay, well, this is just a rich repository of information about Tom and his life. And of course, Dana's in there as well, which makes it very, very special because she shares her memories of photos that people share. And
she's so great.
Oh, I mean, what a saint, hey?
Yes, I just love her. And I have to say, Tom Petty Nation is, for the most part, the only reason I'm on Facebook. Like I'm on my own page, but that's why I'm there. That's the best page out there. And, I see other pages and stuff, and I belong to a few other Tom Petty groups, but this one for me is king.
Of course, yeah. And like I said, because the estate is involved, we get exclusive content. We find out about things going up in the store before other people do, and those kinds of things, right? And of course, the Sirius XM announcements and all that stuff. So, and Mark Felsut's obviously engaged with everything. So having everyone who's actually really connected to Tom involved in that, that changes it, right? So that makes it a different type of group that you don't get. And to be honest with you, I'm members of like a Queen fan group, a Beatles fan group. You don't have that direct line. You don't have that direct connection to people who actually knew Tom. I don't either worked with him or obviously was married to him, so it changes the whole tenor of the conversation in that group, which I think is just fantastic. So did you sort of join, did the fan club send out a sort of a message saying that we're flipping this to a Facebook group, or how did that all go down when the group started?
I found out about TPN at the Mudcrutch show. I met a woman there who belonged to the group, and we just started talking because I was just so excited to be there because it was a big, long stretch for me from when I saw him. And I just started talking to this woman, and we were on and on talking, and she told me she was from Idaho, and I was like, oh, well, you're on Facebook? And I wasn't, because I hated Facebook. And she said, yeah. And I said, I'm going to send you a friend request. And then she told me about TPN, and I was like, oh, I'll have to check it out. So I checked it out a little bit before I joined because I just wasn't into the group thing at that time. I just really was like, I don't have time for this.
Well, it eats a lot. It's like I said, I spend sometimes far too much time in that group just scrolling through and read. But it's that thing of, I think once you start reading people's stories and once you start getting into the sort of the sentimentality of it, you can lose an hour or 2 hours because it's so enjoyable. Slipping back into a time when Tom was still around and still making new music, it rolls everything back, right? So, because again, I got into him much, much later in life. Obviously, I knew Full Moon Fever. I had that on cassette when I would have been, 16 or 17 or something. So I knew those songs, and of course, they were everywhere on the radio. Those songs, they were everywhere on MTV. But then I got into him about sort of 9-10 years ago. I thought, well, I like a lot of these songs, and I'd sort of clued in a bit more that this is an artist that maybe I would love, and went back and started listening to the catalogue. And so when I put the first record, oh yeah, that's a good set of songs. Second record's good. Damn the Torpedoes and Hard Promises. Well, that's like, okay, this guy's the real deal. So now I really have to get into it. And then when I heard Wildflowers, that was just okay, this guy's a genius. This guy's an absolute genius, right? Because that album is just, I still stand by, it's probably the most perfect rock and roll record that anyone's ever recorded, in my opinion.
It's great. I mean, you're not going to get a complaint about me from me.
And we know so much about it too, because with the documentary, we got all that backstory, and you get sort of that, again, it connects you more closely to the music, I think.
Yes. Yes. And did you get to go see the documentary?
The Wildflowers doc. Yeah, so I got in and I was on the screen as were you, which was a wonderful surprise, right? And so
That's
getting
right.
in,
Yes.
and it's funny because I took my friend. I said, "Do you want to go watch this Tom Petty documentary about wildflowers?" And he's a musician. I knew he'd enjoy it, but I didn't tell him that the fans were doing that, and said I was going on the screen, and it kind of turns and looks at me. He said, "Did you know about this?" Like, yeah, I did.
Kevin, I did the same thing to my friend who is also a musician. He's in our local Tom Petty tribute band.
Oh, cool.
And I invited him to come down to the show, and he did. And I did the same thing. I didn't tell him. And he was sitting right here, and he was like, hey.
But what a cool thing to do for the fans, eh? Well, I mean, they don't need to do that. And that's what the Last State really sort of treats the fans with respect the same way that Tom did, and they've continued that legacy, which again is just so important and would have been so important to Tom. So do you have go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, when they asked us to do those videos, they didn't tell us what they were using it for.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought it was going to be used in Gainesville, around his birthday. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
That was even better.
And are you heading down to Gainesville this year for the birthday bash, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know you're not going, but
I'm going to this one. Yeah.
You need to go.
Oh.
You need to go.
Well, next year, yeah. Next year's it's my wife and I's 25th anniversary, and so we're planning a San Diego trip. And so I'm sort of already budgeting to say, okay, well, in October we should go on a second trip. 25 years doesn't come around everyone, so we should do a second trip. Where do you want to go? Gainesville, Florida, maybe. We'll do that.
You should go this year. You won't be disappointed. Just telling. Yeah. Okay, I know. I get
budget.
It. I know.
It's hard, especially with flights. How much flights cost at the moment, hey? It's craziness. But it's going to be a good gig. So, and I think that, obviously there's a bit of controversy around the way things are happening, the way things are shaking out. But to me, it's just go and celebrate Tom. Go celebrate Tom's music. That's all this is. I mean, whoever was organising it and however that all shakes out, that's a different thing. Just go enjoy the music, because there's going to be some great acts there. I hope Jake's going down there again. I think he might be playing this year. So. And I was talking to a guy named Jeff Slate, he was another guy who played at that the fundraiser there 2-3 years ago or something. But Jake was on the bill, and he said the same thing. He said, "Yeah," and he said it's great to bring all those people, and even musicians like Jim Keltner, or the Orbison boys and those kinds of things. All these people who are stars in their own right to a degree. They all love Tom Petty's music. All of them, every single one. Like Steve Ferrone was a fan before he became in the band, right? Like, that's just crazy to think that you're a fan and suddenly you're the drummer for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Give me a break.
I know. He's the only one I ever met.
Okay. Great guy, hey?
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah, he's one of my bucket list guests for my part. I really want to talk to him. So, one thing I was talking to John Paulson about is, I think that your relationship with an artist's music changes as you grow older, and the songs can take on different meanings. Obviously, a certain song, like if there's a certain song that was your kid's favorite, that's always going to be special because it's your kid's favorite song or the first song that they heard or whatever. But as you grow older and as you sort of mature, I think you see more in those songs, right? And especially if you've ever gone through breakup or you've had any sort of trauma in your life, when you look back at things like Echo or She's the One or Wildflowers, you see that pain differently. Yes. So do you think that, like, has your relationship with Tom's music changed in any significant ways over the time you've been listening to him, do you think? I know it's a tough question, but
with some of the older songs, a lot of them I have, those teenage angsty years attached to them, and with boyfriends at that time. But even now, some of those songs are coming out because I do find myself taking some of those songs and putting them to new situations that are going on currently or around now. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing, isn't it, to be able to have this body of work that's so important to so many people and has stayed consistently important for so long. There's not many people who pull that off the same way that Tom did. I've talked to this with lots of people. Like I said, I'm a huge Beatles fan. I'm a huge Queen fan. I'm a huge fan of lots of different bands. But there's something about the way I connect with Tom's songwriting that's just totally different to anyone else. And I don't know what it is. I can't really explain why I feel so moved by it.
In 2018, Tom Petty Radio was down in Gainesville, and they were asking some of us questions. And I remember one of the things I said, because I'm sure I said a lot of things that I don't remember, but one of the things I said is his music is so relatable, because he's not putting any drama, like the hairband drama into his songs. He's just singing about things that are just normal things that happen in people's lives, and he's just so good at it. The best song storyteller I know of. And I think that's for me the big thing is like all those songs were like they instantly connect you.
And it's that sort of like I rage constantly about. I think he's one of the most underrated rock vocalists of all time. People don't give him nearly enough credit for how superb a vocalist he was. And the Heartbreakers are a great band, but again, as a songwriter, some of those lines they brought, like, some days are diamonds, some days are rocks. It's such a simple line, but it's so powerful. And you think, man, I wish I'd written that. That one line. If I'd written that one line, that'd be fine. I'd retire tomorrow. You know what I mean? And there was almost one of those lines in every single song. There's a line when I'm doing my pod, like almost every song, I'm like, that line is and it's almost thrown away sometimes. It's like the second line in the second verse. So it's not part of the chorus, and it's not the big hook that he's hanging the song around, but it's just this little bit of wisdom or a little sort of slant on how he phrases things. Again, just better than anyone else. He did that so consistently. Good. So yeah.
So good. And I have to say, his drawl, like especially on the earlier albums, it was just so different from everything that I'd heard, but it was really, really endearing. And I was almost a little bit offended because since he's been in California, he's taken on more of that dialect.
Yep.
And he sounds completely different, near the end of his career. You can see it really changed in the 90s. At the end of the 90s, things really started changing with his voice. And it's all fine, but like, I love the way he sounded. And I think it was a big part of what I liked about him.
Yeah. Well, so when you saw the Southern Accents tour, did they do Spike?
Yep.
Oh, because that one, right? Because everything you just said, that you can wrap that up in a nice little ball. Spike is that beautiful sort of slick, oily, kind of sassy, drawly kind of story, and it's the perfect encapsulation of what he could do when he was at his peak, right?
Yes, love it.
But he said, and I've talked about this lots too. His voice changed. The timbre of his voice changed, and so obviously as you grow older, and if you smoke all the time, it's going to change your voice. But he could affect a different voice depending on what character he was inhabiting in a story. So again, you think about, American Girl, and then look at something like Cabin Down Below, or then you look at US 41 from Mojo, you almost wouldn't think that's the same singer. If you just threw that at someone who didn't know that it was Tom Petty, they probably would think, oh, is that the same guy singing those three songs?
I think he did take on a different persona for songs, because I can almost pull out songs that he's done, and I'm like, this one reminds me of Springsteen. This one reminds me of the Byrds. This one reminds me, and that happened a lot with his music. And I could tell, he was drawing from those places, because those are all things he grew up with and knew, and he paid tribute to them in his music, but not obviously.
Yeah, not sort of. It was never cynical either, right? It was never, oh, Springsteen's hot right now. Let's try and sound a little bit more like Springsteen. That was never the case. And
no, but the song is "Keeping Me Alive." Listen to it; you will hear.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm going to listen to that immediately as we're done, because I think you're right.
In the beginning of the song, it's kind of Springsteen's inflection in that song, and I kind of hear it as like a tribute. And I know Adria said, later she really appreciated that song because her dad used to talk about not having money for gas and things like that. But that song, to me, that's his little tribute to them, and they were friends. And so I branch out. I'm not just like all strictly Tom. I mean, I I don't know, other things and other things he's connected to. And if he's on other albums, like even if it's one song,
Yeah.
I'll collect that also. And, you know, he was at the No Nukes concert. So I have this, you know, the Springsteen album for that, even though, you know, it's 99% Springsteen, but that's okay. You know, I like him too, but I kind of keep branching out because I keep finding other things that are just fantastic that he had to do with, even if it's not right in the music forefront. I just still, you know, really like learning about those things.
Yeah, and sort of a good example of that is the John Prine album that Howie produced, and that Tom and Mike and Ben, they all played on that. They were the house band for John Prine, who's another artist that I love. And when I found that out, and it's this thing, the more you dig, oh, he was on this album. Oh, and he was Johnny Cash's backing band, and he toured with Dylan, and he did this, and it's like, my God, the number of people who clearly wanted that band, not just Tom, they wanted the Heartbreakers, just shows how really good they were, right?
Yes.
As a band.
And I have to tell you, Kevin, like even thinking about talking to you today, it really, really made me happy because, I mean, people around me know I love talking about Tom Petty, but like talking to you about it, because I know this is going to be, we're going to go somewhere with this. It really, really got me excited. And I was thinking, well, when's the last time I kind of felt like this? And I thought, I kind of felt like this when I was in Gainesville, because, you know, of course, you got to go by his house and go to where he went to school and go to the park and all that. But I met one of his close childhood friends.
Yeah.
And he toured me around and showed me all the spots. He like, here's where Tom accidentally backed his mom's car into the lake on a date. You know, here's the Glen Springs pool where he wrote that song. You know,
man, is that ever cool?
Yeah, I mean, so that was really exciting. But like just going back there, even though I've been there, I've been to Gainesville 3 times now, and every time I go back, I mean, I totally look forward to it. And you're right, those ticket prices were outrageous. But I'm like, I don't care. I haven't gone anywhere for 3 years. I'm going.
Yeah. And you just kind of hit on something there too that I've observed over and over and over again. It seems like every single person either connected with Tom through, you know, through the music side or through the family side, or just the fans themselves, everyone's so cool. Like, I've not had a single person saying, no, I don't want to be on the podcast. I've not had a single person I've spoken to who isn't just like in love with Tom and loves talking about Tom Petty, right? And even again, just like John Scott or Paul Zollo, immediately say, yeah, I'd love to jump on. I love talking about Tom. Of course I would. Of course I'll do it. Because everyone just loves talking about Tom. And again, if you're not, you know, if you're not married to a Petty head, or you're not sort of, if you don't have friends who are really deep into it, this is where we got to get it out. These are the people I can talk to about this thing that I'm so passionate about, you know?
Yes.
I'm sure you find the same thing. So yeah.
And good, you know, I was really looking forward to it.
Well, it's funny because I was talking to I was recording a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to Randy about the podcast, and he said, so when you set out to do this, like, was the initial plan was just to do the albums, right? I thought, yeah, I'll do the albums, and I should throw Mudcrutch in as well. And then I found out at that point, that's what I found out about Playback and about American Treasure. And it's like, oh, this is going to take me a lot longer than I thought it was. This is not like 4 years. This is now 7 years that I get to sit down and do this, which is not a chore at all, but it's just a big project because there's so much material, right?
And I know one of your questions, the one question I remember was, pick an album. Like, gun to your head, pick an album.
The worst question, right, for any fan is like,
Well, you know, whenever people put those questions up, I never ever respond. And I mean, you know, of course they're all special, and I know a lot of people say that. But I mean, if I had to think about it, I mean, I'm such a huge fan because I was listening to them way back in the beginning. Like, those older albums are really super dear to me, and that's when a lot of life changes happen. You know, you're going through your teens and your early 20s and breakups and moving across the country and all that stuff. So I guess I'll say one that is super incredibly important to me is the second album.
Okay.
And it's really important to me. And that one stands out a lot because the songs had such an urgency to them.
Yeah.
And, they're about love and,
There's passion in them. Yeah.
Yes, very passionate. I was a teen then, and all kinds of hormones flying around, and he was sick when he made that album.
Okay, I don't think I knew that.
He had a pretty bad cold. Yeah, and you can hear it in some of the songs. Go back and listen.
Yeah,
voice definitely sounds. You could tell.
Okay, I'll have to check that. Yeah,
but
on some great songs, and again, some great deep cuts on an album, right? Like "Hurt" is a fantastic track. "Magnolia" is a great track.
"Hurt" and "Too Much Ain't Enough." Oh my god! Yeah. Oh my god! Those
Too Much
songs, I'm just like, let's go. That's
that guitar lick that Mike plays in "Too Much Ain't Enough," but it's like, where did this come from? This is electric. It's fantastic.
Yes,
I love Mike Campbell. Again, vastly underrated rock and roller. Like, doesn't get nearly as much credit as he should from sort of the guitar gods kind of lists that come out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, two of the words I hate most that are attached to Tom and the band are overlooked and underrated. They drive me crazy, and I keep thinking, I'm gonna say it, and then I'm like, don't say it. But every time I see that, I'm just like, stop it. He's not. I mean, he's when you're a fan, he's not that way to you. So
of course.
I always like to leave that way out of my vocabulary, just because it drives me crazy, because I know, and it's not how I feel, but it's like, if you're on that fan page, you shouldn't be saying that, because
that's a fair point.
I know, and I understand why and where it comes from, but like, it makes me nuts. I just can't.
Well, I shall endeavor to stop using it, because I think you've convinced me. You've made a very solid argument for not using those two words, so I'm going to take them out of my lexicon. Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so the second question.
Yes.
Mud Crutch or Traveling Wilburys?
Okay, now I remember you asked me that one, and that one's like a really unfair question, because it's not just a group of guys. Like, Traveling Wilburys is, like, you found the land of the magical unicorns, and they're all in one room together, and you thought there was only one unicorn, but now there's several unicorns. It's just that's just so hard. And I mean, I was aware of the Wilburys before I was aware of Mud Crutch. So I mean, and the Wilburys are just so, and they have videos out. I mean, it's kind of unfair comparison. So I can't, because
refuse to answer.
one is a super group, and the other one is a super group of guys, that made great music. So I can't. I feel like that's an apple and an orange.
It's a great answer, and it's a real shame. I always think how cool it would have been to see that band live if they'd ever managed to play live. Because George Harrison's idea, right, was to get the train, travel around the country on the train, drop the sides, play the gig, and then pack up and go. Like, how cool! But it's so unique,
Yes, I have their book too. I have some books in the drawer.
Yeah.
God, I saw Kevin. You should come over and see my stuff. You'd love it.
Well, if I'm down in Denver, I 100% will. 100% will, and I think that would be a good way to waste an entire afternoon. Okay, I'm going to jump back in and give you another question.
Yes, sir.
So, if you could join the Heartbreakers on stage for one song, what would it be, and what instrument would you play, or would you sing? And this is assuming we're going to pretend that if you don't play, you can. And if you don't love singing, or you don't think you have a good voice, that you do. So that's just a hypothetical. Which one would you go with?
Okay. I would not play an instrument, because I can't. And even though you said if I could, I think I would just sing. What song would I sing? One of the older ones, for sure. I think because I do, of course, sing along a lot. And I think I harmonize pretty well with Tom's voice.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So, what song would I sing? I don't know. There's some songs when I'm singing along, I'm like, oh, that sounds so good. And I think I would have sounded good as one of his backup singers.
Yeah.
But like, now that you put me on the spot and ask me,
don't know.
The little cloud is empty. The thought cloud. I don't know, Kevin.
That's fine though. I think just knowing that, I think if you can do harmonies and you can sing backing vocals, that's a cool thing, right? I mean, and no one's answered that before. So that's pretty good. Okay, next question. This is another one that's kind of like your favorite album, and you can choose to sort of sidle around it or work around it if you want to. Do you have a favorite band member other than Tom, or one of the band members maybe that you sort of connect to in a fairly significant or special way?
No.
No.
No, I mean, the only one I ever connected with was Steve, because I met him. But no, I mean, for me, it's always been Tom, and it's never been anybody else. And I love Mike's guitar so much. You know, I love everything he's done with the band, and just the sound that they all completed together. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, for me, it always has been and always will be Tom. And like, you know, I check out some of the Mike Campbell groups, and like I like them, and I got to go see them, and I was very glad to see them. I had tickets to see them in Aspen, and I didn't get to go because they changed the date. There was this date, then it was this date, then it was this date. And with all the changes, even with the hotel, because I had my hotel booked and everything, it was going to wind up costing even more. To break it down. So the tickets were $100, a little over $100 for 2 tickets. It would have cost $150 in gas to drive up there. It's 4 hours away. It's in the mountains. Wow. And the hotel would have been another $500. So it was like outrageous, you know, and I have a job. So, you know, I had already gotten the time off, and then I added a day, and then I was like, oh my God. And I really wanted to go. And then there was flash flood warnings up there and all kinds of weather going on up there. So I wound up not going, but I also had tickets. I saw them in Denver. I had tickets for the Boulder show the day before, and I've had these tickets for years,
2-3 years.
And I had a back injury, so I could have gone to the Boulder show, but I didn't because I was afraid of being in the car would agitate my back. Totally. And I had just gotten an injection in my spine a couple days before, and I was like, I don't think I can handle it. It was kind of a freak accident, but
sounds awful.
It's better. It's better now. At least nothing's going on now. So
that's good. So when you saw Mike, was Margot Price with them or no? Because that's my dream, is to see them sing. Them.
I mean, I did see them with Stan, which was awesome for me, because, you know, I've seen Stan, you know. I've seen almost every iteration of the band, though. The only version I did not see was when Steve and Howie were together. I've seen every other version. I saw the I saw the original Ron, I saw with Howie, you know, and the later versions. But the only one was just the Howie and the Howie and Steve combination is the only one I missed out on.
Would have been cool too.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of live gigs, then your next question is: if you could go to see any Tom Petty concert from history that you weren't at, which one would you choose?
Oh, I would go see like the Dogs with Wings or Wildflowers tour, because I didn't get to see that.
Yeah.
So that would for sure be for me. And I mean, I'm so sorry I missed out on that stuff, but life got in the way.
Absolutely. And I never got to see him live at all. So you're way ahead of where I am, right? So, okay. So question number 7, Walls Circus or Walls number 3, which version do you prefer? If you prefer one of them.
It depends on the mood, because if I'm a little more, I want to hear Circus, you know. If I just want to be more purist, I want to hear regular Walls. So I mean, I like them both, and that question went around, I think around 2017 or 18, and I remember I chose regular Walls because I was like, I like that, you know. I love live versions, and that's another thing I collect. I love live recordings of bands. I even bought a cassette from a guy in England whose sister recorded a show with who knows what, you know, probably brought the little tape recorder to the concert in 87. But I'm just like, I don't care. I want to hear how they sounded. That's all I care about. And the recording was great. I was like, thank you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, those bootleg tapes. I mean, there's a store in Manchester in a thing called the Corn Exchange, which isn't there anymore, which was a hide for that. It was sort of like, that's where all the bootlegs were. That's where all the demo tapes you could always find. And finding these little, same thing, like I picked up a Queen one from 74. So before they were big, and the sound quality isn't great, but you hear, as soon as you hear Freddie's voice cut through, it's like, whoa, they sounded so good back then as a young upstart band, you know. Okay, your next question. This one's a tough one. This one's actually thrown up some really good answers too. If you could pick any artist to cover any Tom Petty song, which artist and which song would you go with? And again, so obviously there's been tons and tons of Tom Petty covers, but
what I would probably have loved, could this be someone that's not alive?
100%. Anyone, yep.
I think I would probably love to have heard John Lennon sing a Tom song.
Oh, there we go. Man, now we got to think about what song though. Something off one of those first 2 albums I think would work with Lennon.
Yeah. You know? I mean, I'd really have to think about it since I haven't thought about that ever before, but I would love that because, you know, I know they were supposed to meet and all, you know, I was home. That's one thing I heard right when it happened because I'm home in New Jersey.
Yeah.
You know, it was probably a school night listening to the radio. It was after 11 o'clock at night, you know, so I had to have the radio low or I was going to get yelled at.
Yeah.
And I heard them announce that he was shot. And, you know the story, he was going to be in the studio the next day and Tom was recording there. And this was Hard Promises. And, you know, this, of course, you know, a few months later is when I got to see them the first time. So it all, you know, it's all swirling around. And I mean, just to think about him doing that because Tom had such reverence for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, Elvis too, because now, you know, Elvis sang a completely different, but gospel Elvis, I mean, I could hear it, you know, and Tom did one of his songs.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
how about John Lennon singing Too Much Ain't Enough?
Yeah.
His voice with that one would be would be rad.
Yeah. I just and I hope nobody chose him before.
No, that's and again, it's one of those things where everyone's answer's been like, totally, that's what needs to happen. You're exactly right. And so, okay.
Yeah. And I guess it's, you know, it goes back to what's important to me in my head and just going back in time. But like, you know, I love that Tom, I'll tell you, Tom, you know, Tom sang Wooden Heart. Wooden Heart is an Elvis song. And that's the song I listen to every time I get on a plane because I am a little nervous when I get on the plane, when I first get on there. And I listen to that song. And I listened to that flying to LA for the last show. And I don't know, it's a big deal. But I mean, I love Elvis too. And you know, Tom did his song, so I could probably hear Elvis doing one of his songs too, but more in his gospel-y, not his, you know, not the campy stuff so much.
Yeah. Southern accents maybe or something like that would be kind of interesting to see how Presley would do something like that, right?
I mean, Johnny Cash did it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, we've got 2 questions left for you. So next one. So what song do you most frequently recommend to people who don't know Tom's music? Like, do you have a recommendation? We say, well, listen to this. This is why I love Tom Petty.
And I'm going to start with, unfortunately, I recommend the more popular stuff because it's more likely something that they would have heard that they'll go, oh, that's who that is. Because when they're not fans, you got to find some way to connect them. And you can't really connect them with Hurt or these songs that, you know, not everybody necessarily knows because you got to get them there first. And then they'll hook in on their own, I think. So it's gotta be one of the hits. It's gotta be like Mary Jane's Last Dance or, you know, Free Fallin', because people have heard those whether they think they did or not. They've heard them.
Well, that's the other thing too. Like I always think about, you know, fans tend to gravitate toward deep cuts just because we've all heard the hits so often, and so you like listening to the stuff off, you know, Deep on Echo or like Joe from Last DJ or something like that, right? That's what I always go back to now. But when you go back, like I was telling someone else that I don't listen to Bohemian Rhapsody much anymore by Queen. I don't listen to Stairway to Heaven by Zepp very often. I love those songs, but they're in there. I know them, right? I don't necessarily listen to it. But American Girl, Free Fallin', Won't Back Down, those big Mary Jane's Last Dance, they're such good songs. Even though they're big, huge, popular songs, they're very, very well written still. And so I still love listening to those songs anytime they come on.
You know what? Yeah, like with Zeppelin, they played Stairway to Heaven on the radio so much, and it wins like all the battles all the time. But like for me, I would sit and listen to, and I'm trying to remember the name of it because I have the live album. I like listening to the live version of Led Zeppelin. That's one thing. I would be sitting on the couch with the headphones on, right next to the stereo, because the cord's only this long. And
the song remains the same. That album.
Yes.
Yeah, the live
song
album
remains the same, and no quarter. I mean, you know how long those are. And it's like, yep.
Awesome. Okay. Your last quickfire question.
Yes.
And then we can probably wrap up. Is describe Tom Petty in 3 words.
My absolute favorite.
Succinct, descriptive, absolutely perfect. I love it. Great answer. Great answer. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I shouldn't keep you too much longer. We've been talking an hour and a half, and that's fantastic. So the artist you said, Highway Companion, Robert Daber, is that the
Robert Daber drew the cover for Highway Companions. Yes.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. Yeah, because I love that artwork on that album.
His artwork is fantastic. It's really tongue in cheek, and like it's like you look at it and you're like, ah, it's awesome.
Okay, I'll check it out for sure then. Yeah, because I'm certainly not an art nerd, but there's certain things. Art's like music in a lot of ways, right? Where it either grabs you or it doesn't, and stuff like that really grabs me. Like I said, that album cover is, and because it's so different to anything else they ever did as an album cover. Obviously, it's a solo record, but
I know it's like, what's with that monkey?
Yeah, and exactly.
A lot of times I remember, like from 60s TV shows, they used to call monkeys companions. I don't know why, but that's where it brings me back to. And it's just like, okay, I get it. I get the monkey is the companion, but it's just such a funny cover.
Yeah, it's odd.
And yeah, once I looked into him and his artwork, it's amazing stuff. And that book, even if you get a copy of that book is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. All right. Okay. Well, you better go. Don't get yourself in trouble.
Thank you so much.
Let's talk again soon.
Absolutely. It's lovely meeting you too, finally. So.
You too.
Okay. Take care.
Bye, Kev.
Bye. Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed that one. Look out this coming week for the video tour of Janet's incredible collection of memorabilia. Please remember that you can continue to support humanitarian efforts in the Ukraine in many different ways, and I would urge you to do so even if you already have done. As always, I've added a link to the Red Cross donation page in the episode notes, and I will continue to do that until the war in Ukraine is over. The Tom Petty Project is a proud member of the Deep Dive Podcast Network. If you like nerding out over your favorite bands, go check them out on Twitter at Deep Dive Podnet and see if there's a pod dedicated to your favorite artist. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Tom Petty Project and on Twitter at Tom Petty Project. And of course, you can find me on YouTube. So follow, like, subscribe as applicable, and please leave a rating if you haven't done that already. Keep talking to me on social media. It's always a gas talking to you guys and gals and anything in between. If I don't get back to you as quickly on Instagram, again, I apologize. It's the platform that I don't spend as much time on Instagram. The Tom Petty Project is not affiliated with the Tom Petty Estate in any way. And when you're looking for Tom's music, please visit the official YouTube channel first to try and find what you're looking for. Go to tompetty.com for official merchandise. And don't forget to check out the Tom Petty Nation and Tom Petty Fans Forever groups on Facebook if you're not already a member of those, as they are excellent fan communities and well worth hanging out in. Until we meet again next week, keep listening to and sharing Tom's music. Try to be kind. Try to say I love you to someone at least once a day. Stay safe and healthy. And I'll be back with you next week to do the album wrap of Hard Promises with my friend John Paulson. Bye-bye.